So you're a homeowner in Florida, and you've got that dream, a beautiful screen enclosure. But what if that dream project turns into a bit of a nightmare when it fails its final inspection? Today, we're digging into the 6 most common and sometimes surprising reasons why even a brand new enclosure just doesn't pass muster.
So let's just jump right in. Picture this. You've poured your time and hard-earned money into this gorgeous new screen enclosure. It looks absolutely perfect, right? But can it still fail a building inspection? The answer is a big yes. And honestly, it happens way more often than you'd probably think.
And that's because, here in Florida, looking good on the outside doesn't mean it's actually compliant on the inside. The state has some of the toughest building codes in the country. And the stuff that an inspector really cares about, yeah, that's usually buried where you can't even see it.
Now this is so important because Florida's codes are strict for a good reason. Your enclosure isn't just a fancy add-on. It's a real structural system that has to stand up to, Florida weather, hurricanes and all. A failed inspection isn't just a piece of paper. It means you're looking at expensive delays, bills you didn't plan for, and maybe even some real safety risks.
All right, so let's break down the 6 biggest traps we're going to cover today. We'll start from the ground up with the foundation and get all the way to those sneaky local rules you might not have even heard of.
First up is maybe the most important reason an enclosure fails, and it's the one you literally can't see once the job is done. We're talking about the foundation.
Now, this is where a lot of projects really get into trouble. The Florida code is crystal clear on this point. Your enclosure has to be anchored to a permitted, reinforced concrete slab or footer. It's not just about having concrete there. That foundation itself has to be on the books, legally approved.
Look, it really boils down to this. If that enclosure is sitting on dirt, or maybe some pavers you laid down, or even a concrete slab that doesn't have its own permit, it's an automatic fail. No questions asked. The inspector might just pack up and leave right then.
Okay, number 2. This is an issue that has absolutely zero wiggle room. We're talking about property setbacks, and this is all about playing by the inches.
So what's a setback? Well, it's that mandatory empty space between your new enclosure and your property line. And let me be clear, it is not a suggestion. Being off by just a tiny bit can cause a huge problem.
And if you want the magic number here, it's 0. That is exactly how much tolerance an inspector has for a setback violation if you don't have a special pre-approved variance. What's on the plan has to be what's on the ground. End of story.
All right, let's move on to something that's all about keeping you and your family safe. It's called the critical drop-off rule, and it applies to any raised patio or deck.
And you can bet inspectors take this one very seriously. If your patio or deck is even a little bit elevated, the Florida Building Code has super specific rules about safety features to prevent falls. If you miss these, it's an instant fail.
So here's the first number you gotta know. 30 inches. If the drop from the edge of your deck down to the ground is more than 30 inches, a guardrail isn't just a nice to have, it is absolutely required by law.
And it doesn't stop there. That guardrail itself has a rule. It has to be at least 36 inches high. An inspector will literally pull out a tape measure, and if it's even a hair short, it's a fail. That's how precise the code is.
Okay, this next one is a real source for frustration for homeowners because you could have a perfectly built enclosure and still fail the inspection. I call it the on-site paperwork trap.
See, when an inspector shows up, they expect to find all the required documents posted right there on site, ready to go. If that paperwork isn't there, they're not even going to start. They'll just mark it as a failed trip and head out.
And probably the biggest one is the Notice of Commencement, or NOC for short. Think of it as the official starting bell for your project. For any job that costs more than $2,500, this document needs to be notarized and officially filed with the county before that first inspection can even happen.
All right, reason number 5. This one boils down to a really simple principle. What gets approved on the blueprint has to be exactly what gets built. Any deviation is a huge red flag for an inspector.
You have to remember, an inspector's whole job is to verify. They'll have those approved engineering plans right in their hands, comparing every detail to the structure in front of them. The slope of the roof, the size of the beams, where the anchors are placed. If anything doesn't match the plan, it's a fail. You can't just make changes on the fly. They have to be officially approved.
And that brings us to our 6th and final reason. A lot of folks think the Florida State Building Code is the only rule book they need to worry about, but in reality, that's just the starting point. Your local city or county can, and often does, have its own set of even stricter rules.
For instance, some counties have rules about protecting large trees. If your property is in what's called a special flood hazard area, there are going to be extra engineering hoops to jump through. And if you live on the water, the setbacks from the canal could be totally different. Knowing these local details isn't optional, it's critical.
Okay, so we've just gone through a lot of potential pitfalls. Let's take a breath and pull it all together. Let's talk about how you can make sure your project actually passes inspection the first time.
Here's the key takeaway. Nearly all of these inspection failures are predictable, and that means they're also preventable. It really all comes down to careful planning, keeping your paperwork in order, and sticking to those approved plans, from the foundation and setbacks right down to the little safety details and local quirks.
And this is really where having an experienced team makes all the difference. A team that already knows all the ins and outs of Florida's codes. With more than 15 years of successfully passing these very inspections, Screen Factory Florida has helped thousands of homeowners navigate this exact process for everything from screen enclosures to hurricane protection. So, if you're looking to avoid all these headaches and build with total confidence, you can reach out to Screen Factory Florida for a free estimate. All of their contact details are right there for you below. Thanks so much for tuning in.